Welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm Rachel. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. I don't know why that came across really strange today. Anyway, my brother is in town and he stayed with me for a night, and he went off to mom's house to hang out with her. And so I feel revived. I feel like my gas tank is full. It was really nice to sit and talk with him and stuff. So that's what's happening. So I felt wrecked after he left. Like, I think I have this in like adrenaline while people are here. I get so excited. And then so he got in my sister's car, and I was just kept holding on to the door like I wasn't going to let them go. Anyway, I was like, okay, I'll let you go. And I shut the door and I turned towards my house, and immediately I felt my head symptoms and everything just consume me. I was wrecked. It was bizarre how fast it hit me, like to the point where I was walking back to the house and I was like, I can't even see straight. So, yeah, that's the kind of thing that happens. And, but that's the kind of thing that also seems worth it to me. Because if I didn't put myself in that situation, I wouldn't be able to find any kind of enjoyment in engaging with people, especially family and people I love. So I'm really happy that I got that time with him, and I will see him again before he goes back to his place of residence. So the topic today is about the Serenity prayer and how it supports this peace of mind and serenity. So I've been talking a lot about peace of mind this week, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about it and how I use the Serenity prayer. What did the Serenity prayer mean to me when I first got it, when I first went to my AA meetings in the beginning before I was staying sober, and what do I feel about it now? So I'll talk about that. And how do I live it? What do I understand it to mean in my life, and how do I use it as a tool to keep my serenity, protect my serenity? So, yes, this was a bit of the topic in the morning meeting this morning. And one thing that resonated with me that I heard this morning was, I forget to pray. And that happens to me because it's not something I've done my whole life. And I really had to start from scratch. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, for lack of better words, start from scratch on what my concept of my higher power is, how I talk to it or him or them, or, however you want to call my higher power, because it's a lot of things. And making it a habit to do it. And I do have the habit of doing it before I go to bed. Like, I don't get in my bed until I get on my knees and do my prayer. And I have made it a habit to say thank you, like express gratitude when something really good happens. And I pretty much do that, maybe not on a daily basis, but several times a week. I will acknowledge something really great happened, and it's it's my way of making sure that I sit in it for a while, celebrate good things. And so that's one way that I do it, is to look up, like I've told you before, look up and say thank you. So other than that, when things are bad, or I'm not feeling good, or I need some sort of support, I forget to pray. I forget that I don't have to do it by myself, that I can lean on this concept of my higher power. And even after all of these years, I mean, it's been 8 years, I feel like every day is a new day. Every day is starting over again because I only have today. And um, I forget, even though I've had sponsors that have reminded me, like, have you prayed about it? No, the answer is always no. I never can say that oh, yeah, yeah, that's the first thing I did. I prayed about it. No, that's not what happens for me. I think that's natural for a lot of people, but it's not natural for me. So I'm working on it, and that's fine. So the first thing that I was given in AA meetings was this super tacky glass, like, sculpture thing that had the Serenity prayer on it. And it was, because it was tacky, I put it in the bathroom and I put it right in front of the toilet. So every time I was hanging out on the toilet, which TMI, so fast forward if you don't want to hear this part, but when I was drinking, I spent a lot more time on the toilet, we'll just say, because it was screwing everything up in there. I thought I was allergic to gluten because it was so bad, but that's not what it was. And of course, I tried everything else before I stopped drinking. And then when I stopped drinking, that's when everything resolved itself. So anyway, I put the tacky glass sculpture in the bathroom. And so every time I was in there, I would read it. And I was still drinking, but I would read this because I wanted to be struck sober. And I thought that if I went to an AA meeting and I read the Serenity prayer and I just did the things that they said to do, that I would be struck sober. Of course, that didn't happen. I was always trying to do the minimum in order to be struck sober. And it didn't happen, so I would do a little more. It didn't happen, so I would do a little more. It turned out I wasn't going to be struck sober. I had to do everything that was suggested of me. And I see it happening with other people who come into sobriety. I see them just doing the minimum. If I go to meetings, then I'll be struck sober. If I call my sponsor, I'll be struck sober. If I pray a whole lot, I'll be struck sober. And that's just not how it works. Like, I had to practice, I had to implement, that's the word, on every suggestion that was given to me, every single one of them, in order to be able to not pick up a drink and want to not pick up a drink. Um, so I put this sculpture in the bathroom, and I got it from my sponsor at the time. She's the first person, I think she's the first person I asked to be my sponsor the first time I went in, and I never stopped drinking. And she worked at 7-Eleven, and she was an alcoholic and addict. And then I stopped going to AA. And then when I went back, she wasn't there. So I always think about her and wonder what happened with her, if she stayed sober or not. I might even say that I've prayed for her maybe once or twice, as I learn how to pray for people. So, despite reading the Serenity Prayer on my tacky glass sculpture, I keep wanting to say my tacky ass sculpture, my tacky glass sculpture, I kept drinking. And that was really because I had no understanding of what the words meant. I mean, intellectually, I knew what they were saying, but I couldn't read between the lines. And what I've come to understand, and this is what came to mind today, is that there's something in the Serenity prayer that isn't explicitly mentioned, and that is the thoughtful pause. the pause where we actually sit and consider what we can and we can't change. And the serenity that comes from actually being able to make that decision is from working the steps of the program. It's really only after we practice the steps and talk to sponsor and for me go to an addiction therapist that I even have the ability to pause. When I first started practicing this prayer thing and practicing the meditation thing, I didn't I couldn't pause my brain. I couldn't pause that hamster running on the wheel in my head. I was still searching for serenity outside of myself. And I was still searching for serenity at the bottom of my Vella Chardonnay box of wine. And sometimes I felt like I found it. Sometimes I felt like, I mean, I still remember um, that feeling of taking the first drink after not having had a drink for several hours. Say I was on a business trip and I couldn't take a drink during business hours. That's terrible. It sounds terrible. It is terrible, but that's the reality of it is once I got off work and I got to have that drink, I remember feeling like all the happy chemicals just flushed through my body as soon as I tasted the wine because I knew what was coming. I knew that I was going to be able to relax. And without it, I couldn't relax. And so I thought that that's what serenity was. And that's not what it was. But I didn't realize that until I got into the program and I started cleaning out my dark place after practicing the steps. And then I knew serenity. I knew what it was finally. Um, so the serenity prayer is something that I hear a lot of people in the beginning of their sobriety talk about. My mind just went blank, if you can't tell. They talk about like how they repeat it over and over and over again. And that was the same for me. I started having these little reminders everywhere. So I had my tacky we'll just say tacky ass sculpture. I had that I would repeat it. And I don't know, you hear it in all the meetings. And so I would repeat it like whenever anything was that anxiety that was existing raw when I stopped drinking, that was I guess how I spoke to that anxiety to try to make it calm down is I would say that the serenity prayer. And I wasn't really doing anything, I wouldn't say, but I was saying it over and over again. And I think that that was important, that I was drilling it in. And I think it took what it took. But I can see that the serenity prayer is a process. And it's not just repeating it, it's actually almost stopping at each word and understanding really what it means. A lot of these things that prayers and our big book and some of the things that we are introduced to, some of the literature in sobriety, the steps are a great example. The words that are chosen are so thoughtfully chosen for a specific reason. And I feel like sometimes when I'm in meetings, I hear folks share, and I feel like they're almost thinking too much about the words that are chosen. But I don't think you can think about it too much, because the time that we spend really dissecting how something is written for the program and what it means to us is time that is spent strengthening our sobriety. So, the Serenity prayer, I think, is a process, and it's talking about the gifts that were given. For me, this is what it says to me. It's talking about the gifts that I'm given if I practice the program. So I actually have, if for those of you who are looking at the camera, right above my head is the Serenity prayer on 3 frames. So what it's what it's giving me is courage, wisdom, and serenity. Not exactly in that order. Serenity, courage, and wisdom. Um, those are the gifts of not picking up a drink, of going to meetings, practicing the steps, and practicing the principles in all my affairs. That's where I get those 3 gifts. I'm able to use them only if, and I didn't mention the other part of what gives me that gift is improving my relationship with my concept of my higher power. So that's where I find the serenity. That's where I found the serenity. So I've talked about how I cleaned out my dark place and stuff. And then I was walking that one day and I paused and I was like, this is it. This is what serenity feels like. This is what it feels like to have nothing wrong. And I heard somebody else say the exact same thing in my morning meeting this morning about how there was a moment that they were like, oh my gosh, there's nothing wrong right now. And that's what it feels like. For me, that's what it felt like. And so that gift came from practicing the program. And the serenity prayer says, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. So if I practice the program and I know serenity, then and only then will I know how to fully accept things that that I can't change. And then if I gain this wisdom, and the wisdom is gained by me learning how to pause from the program. If I don't pause, then I don't have space for wisdom. I'm just reacting if I don't pause. So if I pause, then I've got wisdom, and I've gained that wisdom by pausing. It's like learning through experimentation. That's what I've done. Learn by doing. I paused and started to learn what it was like to pause, and what is it like to be experiencing something and not try to change it and just observe it. Then I gain the wisdom of what that's like. And what is it like when something is happening and I can change it, and I do I take the action on it to make that change. What is that like? That's how I learned the wisdom from it. But it started with the pause. And again, I only know how to pause from my program, because that's what it told me what to do, how to do. That's what told me how to do that. And then courage. Yeah, courage. This really hit home for me this morning. Like, I was thinking, where did the courage come from? The courage came from me becoming more self-confident. It came from working the steps and learning about myself and caring about myself and loving myself. That's where the courage came. And that, again, is a product of the program. So I am gifted this courage, and that's how I can take action and change the things that I can. But all of these things did not just happen overnight. It was something that I earned through working the steps of my program. So the Serenity Prayer, because of the program, the serenity is granted after we put in the work. And that means working the steps, showing up to meetings, staying connected with my support system, Team Rachel, and really living in a solution, having a solution mindset rather than how I used to be, which is just having a problem mindset. I mean, I don't know if that's what you call it, but that's all I did. I just existed in the problem. I never, if I at work, so I have this thing at work when I was working that if somebody comes to me, I learned this from other people that I worked with in my career. If somebody comes to me, don't bring me the problem. Don't bring me the problem if you're not going to bring a solution with it. And that's what, although I would, you know, preach that at work, I didn't practice it in my life. I can't approach life looking at all the problems and not um, being interested in or seeking a solution. And I was seeking a solution in the wrong place. I was seeking it again at the bottom of my box of Chardonnay. But when I have that solution-based mindset, the serenity starts to come, starts to surface, because every time I have something that I need to address, I take action on it and it clears away, and there's the serenity pops up to the surface. And I have that way, if I'm feeling really spiritually fit, I can accept things that I can't change. So another thing I learned today, or that I heard somebody say today, is that acceptance does not mean that you have to like the situation. And I think that is a common misconception. Accepting something doesn't mean that I'm happy with it, or that I'm even comfortable with it. Acceptance means that I'm able to surface my serenity despite it. I'm not going to put it in my dark place. Whatever it is, I'm not going to put it in my dark place and have it weigh down my serenity. I'm accepting it. I'm not going to hold on to it. I'm going to move it along, move it along. I'm going to hand it over to my higher power. I can put it in my God box if I want to. So acceptance really means that I'm taking that thoughtful pause, as the Serenity Prayer reminds me of, and I'm making a decision, a conscious decision that, I don't want, I think I want to keep my serenity today. I'm not going to hand it over to anybody. So I'm just going to put that over here and move on. That's what acceptance is for me. There's been a lot of things going on over the past year that I don't want to accept it. Like, I can accept something and not even want to accept it. I'm just doing it because I have to take some kind of action. And if I can't change it, if I pause and I decide, can I change this or can I not? And I use my wisdom from my experience over the time that I've been sober. Um, and I decide that I can't change it, then you know, I just have to do something about it. So I may not like it. I don't want to do it, but I just accept it. There's nothing I can do about it. Why try to steer the ship with my arm swimming in front of the ship? I'm never going to be able to move it. So just let it go. Just let it go. So when I hear the Serenity prayer, it almost makes me stop in my tracks now. That the way that it makes me feel, it feels good, almost like the way that I would stop for a drink. Only this time it's not to numb the pain. It's about feeling good, about finding clarity in the moment, and even when things get messy and overwhelming, the Serenity prayer kind of simplifies things in my life. It makes me simplify it, whatever it is, into, can I change this or can I not change it? Period. That's all it comes. That's what everything comes down to. Can I change it or can I not change it? And some things there are that I can't change, and it's gonna still take me a long time to process it. Like, say somebody passes away. I can't change that. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't, it hurts. I can't change it. Um, I have to accept it. I don't have a choice. But sometimes it can take me 2.5 years to accept it. And that doesn't mean I've stopped in my tracks. That doesn't mean I'm pausing my entire life for 2.5 years, but it is a process. That's what I mean by the Serenity prayer is a process. And sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, it can happen in our lives. I've had plenty of opportunities to practice the pause. Um, sometimes sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's taken a week. I had something really critical happen this year with my family, and it took me 2 weeks, and I was able to accept things as they were. And it was gone. Now, that doesn't mean, again, that I don't think about it, but I've made a commitment to myself that I'm done burning energy about it. What I mean by that? Like, it's not going to lead me to a drink in a million years. I've been able to put it somewhere, and that somewhere is not in my dark place. Yeah. So I'm not wrestling with it anymore. So it really is a beautiful thing in my life, and I wanted to share how I do it and what it means to me, just in case it can help somebody else out there. So try to remember to pray, and sometimes it's just reciting. In the beginning, for me, it was just reciting the Serenity prayer over and over and over again, until I started living it, just like the steps. When we read the steps, we come to the meeting, we talk about the steps, we talk about what's going on and how to apply some of these things. And then we all get set free into the world for a day, and we apply all the principles in all of our affairs. And then we come back the next day. And that's why I like to go to the meeting every day. We come back the next day in the morning and we talk about, well, this is what happened. This is what I'm dealing with. And within those shares, I hear people saying how they practiced the parts of the Serenity prayer. And so in the beginning, that's why I was just reciting. But over time, I started to see, oh, this is what, John Smith said. This is what he was dealing with. And the Serenity prayer worked for him. So I'm going to do that too. And then it starts working for me. So it's a process, it takes time. And I believe that it all starts with taking a pause. So, thanks for listening today to the Recovery Daily podcast. I will talk to you tomorrow.